Hello and welcome to this video. In this video I will show you how you can create jewelry dishes using air dry clay. As you can see, you can create jewelry dishes in any shape because the air dry clay can be shaped any way you like. I have created jewelry dishes that have specific geometric shapes, such as these, for example. You can create irregular shapes, you can create boxes such as this one, and you can decorate the surface using different textures. And in order to create the textures, you can use texture sheets such as this plastic texture sheet, or you can use dotting pens such as these. And in order to add the colors, you can use brushes or other items such as sponge. In order to roll out the sheet of clay that you will later turn into a jewelry dish, you can use a roller, and you can also use popsicle sticks to establish how thick the clay should be. Later on I will show you exactly how to use the popsicle sticks and the roller in order to create the sheet of clay. For cutting the clay you can use specific cutters. You can also use metal blades such as this one. And after you have added the colors and decorated your jewelry dishes with textures such as this baroque floral texture, and the color has dried, you can also add a layer of varnish, which will protect the surface from humidity on the one hand, because air dry clay tends to absorb humidity very easily, and on the other hand it will protect the colors and make them look more intense and more shiny. Whenever you work with air dry clay, it is important to have a recipient of clear water around, because in this water you can create the slip. The slip is clay mixed with water that you will use in order to cover the surface of your dishes, so that you can make them shiny and beautiful, and also you can cover the cracks in case the jewelry dishes get some cracks. And also the water will help you wash your hands whenever the clay tends to stick to your hands. So I will show you now how you can create these jewelry dishes step by step. I will use this clay. First of all, I will mix the clay a little bit so that the clay is softer. The structure is more uniform and it is easier to model. And now I will take the shape that the cutter with which I will cut the shape I like, and I will take a roller and start creating the surface that I will cut. So as you can see, you can use a simple household item if you need to cut larger surfaces. Otherwise, you can also use special cutters designed especially for cutting clay, or you can also use cookie cutters. I will remove the excess clay. And now I will remove the cutter, and I will also lift the shape from the surface. I will take some water to make sure that all these edges that do not look aesthetic, as you can see, this is paper. These are paper edges here, because it is a paper-based clay. And I will make those edges smooth using some water. Like this. So I have made sure that the edges and the surface are all smooth, and I'll put the item to dry now. In order to put the item to dry, I will take a support like this, and I'll put the clay in this shape, in this recipient, and let it dry. Like this. Now I will let the clay dry for a period of between 24 to 48 hours. In maximum 48 hours it should be dry. I will check every now and then that the drying process is fine, so that the item doesn't lose its shape. And once the item has dried completely, I can continue by adding the colors and the varnish for protection against humidity. Now the jewelry dish has dried. I will use a piece of sandpaper to make sure that the edges are smooth. And the surface is also smooth. And now I can start adding the color. I will use sponge to add the color, and I will start adding the first color. I will start with blue. I will also add the color to the margin of the dish. Now I will add a second color. I will add Prussian blue. I will now add a third color. I will add a bit of green. Like this. I will also add another color. I will add some white. Like this. Now I've also added the white color. And I will now add the last color that will also give a shine to the surface. I will add some gold. Now I've also added some gold to the surface. And now I will let the jewelry dish dry, and then I can add the gloss varnish to make it look more shiny and beautiful. And now that the jewelry dish has dried, I will start adding the gloss varnish in order to protect the surface from humidity and also to make the colors look more shiny. I will apply the varnish by using a brush that is kept permanently moist by using some water. And I will apply one layer, after which I will let the varnish dry for about 4 hours. The drying time of the varnish is about 4 hours. And after 4 hours I can apply a second layer. You can apply several layers, as many as you like. The more layers you apply, the shinier and more beautiful the jewelry dish will look. It is recommended to add at least 2 layers to make the jewelry dish look more shiny. Generally, if you do not add the gloss varnish, the clay may absorb water if there is humidity in the air, and then the jewelry dish will become soft again and lose its shape. So the gloss varnish has the role of protecting the clay from humidity. This way. And now that I have applied the gloss varnish, as you can see, the jewelry dish looks more shiny, more beautiful, the colors are more intense. Let's let the jewelry dish dry. I will create a jewelry dish using some clay. I will use a roller. And now I will cut out the shape. Now I will lift the clay and I will make sure that the edges are smooth. I will use some water in order to make sure that the edges of the jewelry dish are smooth. And now I will put the jewelry dish to dry. I will put the jewelry dish like this. To take the shape of this pot, I make sure that the back of the jewelry dish is always also smooth, and for that I will use some slip to make the surface smooth and also shiny. And I will let it dry for at least 24 hours. Now the jewelry dish has dried and I will start adding the decoration, but before that I will take the sandpaper and make sure the edges and the surface are smooth. And now let's start adding the first color. I will add the color gray. I will also add the gray color to the margin of the dish so that the dish looks uniform. This way. I will add some white. Now I have added the white color. I'll also add some black color. Now I've also added the black color. And let's add the last color to the surface of the jewelry dish. I'll add some gold. Now I will let the jewelry dish dry. And after the jewelry dish has dried, I can also add a gloss varnish. Now that the jewelry dish colors have dried, I will apply some gloss varnish to the surface. I have chosen some acrylic gloss varnish, which I will apply using a brush. I will apply it in one thin layer, and then I will let it dry for 4 hours, after which I will apply a second layer of varnish. Like this. Now that I have applied the layer of gloss varnish, I will let the jewelry dish dry. As you can see, now the jewelry dish has a shiny look. And the more layers of varnish you add, the deeper the colors will look and the more beautiful will the jewelry dish be. And the varnish also protects the clay from moisture and from deformation, because if there is moisture in the air, the clay tends to absorb the moisture and become moist and lose its shape. So let's let the jewelry dish dry. I will use this air dry clay in order to make a jewelry dish. First of all, I will create a layer, a flat layer of clay. I will mix the clay a little bit so that it has a uniform structure and it is easier to shape. I will take the roller and create the clay surface that I need. Now I have created a layer of clay that I will start cutting out. I'll make sure that the edges are smooth. I will take a texture sheet, put some water on the texture sheet so that it does not stick to the surface I imprinted on. I will put the texture sheet and make sure that the texture sheet is imprinting into the surface. This way. And now that I have created the texture sheet, I will put now the item to dry in a shape. So it will get a rounded shape because of the dish that I put it into. I will let it dry for about between 24 to 48 hours, and I will check every now and then to see if it hasn't lost its shape. If it loses its shape or gets cracks, I will make the clay damp again by using a wet piece of cloth, and then I can reshape it the way I want. If it gets cracks, I can simply make some slip, that is water mixed with clay, to make a pasta with which I can cover the cracks. So after it has dried, after maximum 48 hours, I can continue by adding the colors and the gloss varnish, which will protect the clay from humidity, because clay absorbs humidity very easily. Now I will take the jewelry dish. It has dried, and I will use a piece of sandpaper to make sure the edges of the jewelry dish are smooth. Like this. And now I will use sponge in order to apply the colors to the surface of the jewelry dish. I will apply some neon colors. I will begin with a lighter color. I will begin applying neon yellow. As you can see, the texture will become visible as soon as I start applying the colors. I will also apply them to the edge of the jewelry dish. The neon orange. like this. Like this. I've also added some neon green. Now I will add some neon blue as well. This way. Now I've also added the blue color, golden color. So I have also added gold to the surface of the jewelry dish. Like this. And now I will let the jewelry dish dry, and once it has dried, I can also add a gloss varnish. The gloss varnish will make the colors look more vivid and make the jewelry dish more resistant to water, because air dry clay tends to absorb water. Now the jewelry dish has dried, and the colors have dried on the surface, and now I will add some gloss varnish to seal the surface to protect it from humidity. I will add it by using a brush that I will keep moist all the time by dipping it into some water, and I will cover the entire surface of the jewelry dish with the varnish, like this. And the gloss varnish will protect the clay from humidity, and it will also give the colors more shine. This way. And now that I've added the colors, the gloss varnish, the gloss varnish will make the surface look more shiny. It will protect the colors and the clay from humidity, and it will make the colors look more intense and more beautiful. Now let's let the varnish dry for 4 hours, and after 4 hours the varnish should be dried, and I can apply a second layer of varnish. I will use this bit of air dry clay to create a jewelry dish. I will roll out the surface of the clay. And I will also add a design, an abstract flower design, by using a texture sheet. Now I have removed the texture sheet from the clay, and now let's create a shape for the jewelry dish. I will try to create an irregular shape for the jewelry dish. This way. So I will let the shape this way, an irregular shape, and I will now remove the clay from the surface, and I will try to make sure that the back of the jewelry dish is looking smooth, as well as the edges. Now I have put the jewelry dish in a recipient to take the shape of this recipient, and I will let it dry for a period of 24 to 48 hours. In a maximum 48 hours it should be dry, and then I can continue adding the colors as well as the varnish to protect it from humidity. Now that the jewelry dish has dried, I will use some sandpaper in order to make the edges smooth. And now I will start adding the colors. I will use a sponge to add the colors. The first color that I will add will be magenta. Now I've added magenta as the first color. I will add the next color. Purple. I'll add white. Now that I've also added white, now I've also added some gold to the surface, and I will let the colors dry now. Now that the jewelry dish has dried, I will start adding the gloss varnish. I will add it by using a brush that I will keep constantly moist by dipping it into some water. And I'll cover the entire surface of the clay with the varnish. Like this. Now after 4 hours I will add another layer of varnish, because the drying time of the varnish is about 4 hours, and this varnish will on the one hand protect the clay from humidity, and on the other hand it will give the clay a beautiful shiny look, and the colors will be more intense. Now let the clay dry. I will use this piece of air dry clay to create a jewelry dish, a rectangular jewelry dish. And for that I will use a roller. As a roller I will use this time a glass bottle, because a smaller a roller, such as the plastic roller, would be too small to create the surface that I want to create. So if I want to obtain a larger surface of clay, I will use something larger, and a simple household item such as a glass bottle is very practical to use in this case. And now I will remove from the surface the clay, and I will take the mold that I will use in order to create the jewelry dish. So I will take this rectangular plastic and now I will let the clay dry inside this rectangular shape, and after it has dried I will start adding the colors. And now that the clay has dried, I will start applying the color. I will apply some black color. So I'll cover the entire surface in the black color. And now I will leave the color to dry, and I'll add the next color. Now that I've added the black color, I will add some ornamentation as well. I will add some neon colors. I'll also add some neon orange. I'll also add some neon pink. I'll add some green as well. And I will add some traces of blue. Now let it dry. And now I will also add some color to the jewelry dish. I'll add a bit of shine. I'll add some a bronze to the surface of the jewelry dish. Like this, to make the surface more shiny and beautiful. Now I will use the gloss varnish. I will apply it with a brush, and I'll keep the brush moist by using some water. And I'll apply the varnish. And then I will wait for 4 hours. After I have applied one layer, I will wait for 4 hours after the layer has dried, and then I will apply another layer of gloss varnish. So the time in between applications is 4 hours.